Hello everybody, how are you all doing out there? It's another sunny day here in Alconbury. Anyway, I thought I'd bring up this little subject today. Brake vacuum pumps on the Mk5 Mondeo 2 litre diesel, specifically because they're leaking oil. I have had more and more of them start to leak oil, so I thought now's a good time to say something about it, just so you all know if you get the same problem. If you don't know what a brake vacuum pump is, I'll try and explain in the easiest way I possibly can. It's a little pump that's bolted to your engine, generally driven by your camshaft. It delivers vacuum assistance to your brake servo or brake booster, so you can brake quickly. If the pump wasn't working and there was no vacuum in your brake servo, your brake pedal would be really hard and you wouldn't be able to stop, or you'd have to literally stand on your brake pedal to try and stop. That's how serious it is. Because diesel engines can't produce the vacuum servo like assistance needed, they have to have a pump bolted to the engine to create the vacuum. But anyway, in the defence of these servos, I will say, in all the years the Mk5 Mondeo has been out, I have never had a brake vacuum pump fail. They're leaking a lot of oil now, but they haven't actually failed and stopped working. However, if I go back to the Mark 1 and Mark 2 Mondeos, the 1.8 TDCIs, they had two problems. They had a very different vacuum pump on them engines, but they had like a casing that had rivets on them, and in some cases the rivets would come loose and they'd piss out oil everywhere. And also I've had a number of cases of them where the brake vacuum pumps stop working altogether. And if you can imagine, you're driving along and you're going to stop and you put your foot on the brake and your pedal is really hard, you'll be like, oh, flipping heck! You'd literally have to stand on the brake pedal to try and stop, and you'd be lucky if you avoided an accident. It's pretty dangerous if them pumps would stop. So these modern ones that go on these Mk5 Mondeos, although they're starting to tick me off now because they leak a lot of oil, they haven't ever failed, not once, as far as I know. If you know any better, let me know. I would love to hear. Anyway, what I'm going to do, I've got a car outside. I'm going to unbolt the pump off it, have a look at it, and I'm going to put it on another car because I'm running out of pumps. In fact, I used to have 3 or 4 spare pumps. They're all gone. They've all been used, and I'll tell you in a little while how much Ford the dealership wants for these pumps. Anyway, I'm going to get out to this car, get this pump unbolted, so come this way. This particular car we've got here has got a seized engine. I think it started rattling and then all of a sudden the engine's just locked up solid, so I presume the big ends or main bearing shells are completely kaput. So this engine is scrap. Now, on this right here is the brake vacuum pump. This is what gives you the vacuum for your brake servo, which is underneath the scuttle panel there. I'm going to remove this brake vacuum pump. The reason being, I'm going to fit it onto an engine I'm just fitting in another car, because Ford charge, it's over £400 plus VAT for a new one of these pumps. So it seems a little bit pricey, if you know what I mean. And I don't have a spare pump. We've used all the spare ones we've got. Anyway, that bracket comes off 3/8mm, and you basically it's pretty simple. You unclip the wiring, take that bracket off. You best remove your air cleaner box, which is only a couple screws. The reason why I'm actually taking this pump off is because it leaks oil, and it's becoming more and more of a common problem now. So I'm going to have to sort of like search on eBay to see if I can find some of these pumps, because I don't fancy paying like nearly £500 a pop for these, especially when you've got a whole load of these Mondeos and they're all starting to fail now. And it's typically over 200,000 miles these will start to leak. On the engine I've got inside the garage, I'll show you in a minute, I'll show you where these leak from, and I'll actually show you how the oil runs down the back of the engine, so you can see sort of like what to look for. Anyway, I'm going to whip this off. It's pretty straightforward. You've got one pipe there. If I can, you kind of, this clip here for your brake servo hose, you pull that clip up. Well, that's come off, but you're supposed to pull it up a little bit, and then that pops out like that. There's another clip here. You're probably best getting a little pick behind here, and then you can pull these tabs out, and then put these, that just pulls off, and then you've got 3 13mm like bolts, and then the pump will just come straight out. I've managed to find the red clip I just lost. That was down on the bloody under tray, but I thought I would just show this. These clips here, there's 2 of them, one either side. You're best with a little pick like this. You can either get them inside there like that and push the clip out. They can be a little bit on the tight side to get off, so be careful you don't break nothing. So this one's a little bit tough, but yeah, come on, it's off. Just be careful with this type of thing, because if you snap this pipe, then you're in trouble and you're going to have to order a new one. They won't keep a pipe like that in stock at Ford. Okay, last one coming out. And then you just pull it off. This is pretty straightforward. There'll be some oil spillage, no doubt. There, that's it. And it comes with a gasket. So I'm going to go and put this one on the bench and check to see this one isn't leaking as well. I have just removed this engine from one of the taxis, and the brake vacuum pump on this particular engine was leaking really badly. I have the actual pump on the bench, and I'm going to show you that pump in a minute. But if you can see on top of the thermostat housing assembly, you see all the oil there, because believe me, it's not the gasket that's leaking, it's leaking out of the pump. I will show you exactly where these pumps leak in a minute. But what happens is the oil leaks out of the pump on top of this thermostat housing, and so you have a little puddles of oil up there, and then it runs down the back of the thermostat housing and along that water pipe, and it will then drip down onto the gearbox and the back plate of the engine, and it will run down the back edge of the engine and all the way down and then drip onto the floor. So you could mistake it for actually the pump leaking, because the actual high pressure fuel pump here, where it bolts into a cog unit, there's a gasket there, they are profoundly leaking anyway. So you could get this wrong. You could change all these gaskets on your high pressure pump and that, and then find it's still leaking, simply because it's the actual brake vacuum pump that's actually causing the leak. So whenever you get up here and you've got a leak, you want to have a look. I know it's difficult to see, but if you can kind of look underneath the pump, if you see your thermostat housing is all soaking wet with oil on the top there like that, then I can pretty much guarantee you need a new brake vacuum pump. Here we go. This has sat on this bench overnight. Look at that bloody oil slick. Flipping heck, Saudi Arabia would be proud. Anyway, if you notice, just here, nothing has ran out of the pump from inside onto the bloody desk. I think what I'll do is I'll clean this oil slick up, and I'll leave it for another hour or so, and then I'll show you exactly where it's coming from. Okay, that pump I had on the bench sitting in the oil slick, I've moved it over to this car and left it on the bonnet slam panel. Now, there's no oil that's actually leaked from the inside part of the pump. So, but you can see there's soaking wet with oil underneath here. That is absolutely pissing oil there, and that's where it's coming from. You see that where this metal part here, where it bolts on, there's like 3 screws that hold it on. So there's obviously a seal in there, and it's leaking between that seal and the main casing. So I think, and this is becoming like, lots of them are starting to leak now, and when like Ford are charging 400 and something plus VAT for a new pump, it's a lot of money, especially when there's like nearly 100 cars on the road. Well, there's about 100 taxis here. So, and also the pump I just took off that car I showed you a little while ago, that I was going to put on this car I'm doing, that's leaking as well, although not as bad. So I've looked on eBay, link in the description. I found a pump. I found a pump on eBay, apparently like a pattern part one. So I'm going to try it and see if it works, and I'll let you know on that. But in the meantime, I think what I'll do, I shall take this cover off here and have a quick look in here and see what we've got. I bet it's just like a rubber O-ring that's just gone flat or gone hard or something like that. Okay, this is it. It's loose. Hello. Ooh. Right, well there you go. I was correct. It's just a bloody O-ring that sits in there, and it's gone flat, as O-rings do. Oh, I've just broke it now. Yeah, it's just a little O-ring, rubber O-ring, and it's just flattened. And the oil's just seeping past it. Oh well, I don't suppose for 1 minute you'd be able to get one of these O-rings, otherwise it'd be like a 10p fix really, wouldn't it? But I can't see anyone's going to supply these O-rings. I've just dropped one of these little paddles, but it's all falling apart. But when this pump spins, it will spin around quite quickly, and obviously it will create the vacuum, and it will come out these tubes and go off to your brake vacuum pump and wherever else it goes. I think a lot of this goes to your vacuum units around the front of the engine on the EGR valve. But yeah, not a lot to it. Not a lot to it for the £500 Ford want for one of these, when all that's really gone wrong with it is the O-rings gone flat. So there's no chance of me finding an O-ring, I'm sure. And I don't fancy putting any sealer on that. I don't think that's going to work somehow. Right, that's it. I've lost interest. I'm not talking no more about brake vacuum pumps. That's the end of the video. Just one last thing. I know you all like a little bit of destruction. You see this Mk5 Mondeo 2-litre diesel behind me? This is what happened. I was stood here in the garage yesterday afternoon, and I heard this almighty bloody engine roar. So I turned around and looked outside the door, and all I saw was a massive, great big freaking shit cloud of smoke. And the engine was continuing to rev until the black smoke had all cleared and it was brown smoke coming out. And then the revs went down on the car. And I thought to myself, what the hell is he revving the engine like that for? And the driver gets out, and I go over to him. He goes, I switched the engine off, I turned the key off, but it carried on revving. And I thought, aha. Yeah, that sounds like the turbo's gone. The bearings are gone in the turbo, and the engine's running on its own bloody engine oil. So yeah, that was the case. The turbo is definitely knackered. We've taken the turbo off, and I've got it on the floor down here. So come and have a look. This turbo has done just over 295,000 miles, and it comes as a whole manifold assembly. Like that. Anyway, let's get to the nitty gritty. I'll get my long nose pliers on the impeller. You can see all the actual impeller, how it's all bust at the end, the vanes. They're all been sort of like hit with something. But anyway, you ready? Are you ready? Woohoo! That is, oh come on, get a grip on it. That is absolutely bollocks. Look at that. It still turns, but it's like the bearing in the middle is completely gone. That is screwed big time. And you know what I was saying a while back, that we have very, very few turbo problems on these taxis. In fact, the only time I can remember we've had a turbo problem was when one was actually leaking. Where is it? This here actuator for the wastegate. It was leaking fumes out of here. That's the only problem I've had. We've never had the bearings go. So, but yeah, this is the first one ever. The guy who was driving this car, he was actually on his way. He got up here, he drove up here, but his engine management light come on, the spanner light come on his dash. It went into limp mode, he had no power at all, and he continued to drive it up here, and it drove okay, but obviously with reduced power. And that's the reason he brought it up here, because he had lost power. And he was just parking the car up, about to swap into another car, when his engine just basically took off all by itself. So at least it bloody ate its own engine oil in the right place. It wasn't on the road when he was still driving, because that would have shit him up, I'm sure. Yeah, so we've got to put another turbo on it. At least of all the engines we've changed in the past, we've kept the turbos, so we've got plenty of spare turbos, that's for sure. Anyway, that's it for today. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you all in the next one. See ya.